Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of The Main Cut. I am your co host Jade, the founder of Main Hookup, and I'm with Katanda, our head of education and community.
Hi, everyone.
So, by now, you know that every other week, Katanda and I come on here and we talk about some of the either latest things that we're hearing in the industry or some of the problems that people are talking about. And this week is no different. So, something that's cropped up time and time again is, when people go into salons and they go in expecting to have a normal treatment or, have their hair washed and blow dried, and they have a really bad experience when a relaxer has been used in their hair without their consent. So it's been disguised as another product, as like a conditioner or something else, and they didn't know. And then before they know it, their head full of natural hair is completely relaxed, and there's no way for them to undo that at that point. So it's a problem that a lot of people talk about, but we also don't know like where that stems from, why it happens, how it even gets to that point that people are in a chair where somebody thinks that that's an acceptable thing to do. So we just wanted to bring it to our community today and to talk about it and also get your thoughts on it, because there may be people who have had that experience, who've had it done to them. So yeah, Katanda, I mean, I'm sure that you have seen or heard or had people speak to you about this many a time. What's been like your experience of seeing this?
So it has been, unfortunately, a topic of conversation on several occasions. And to your point, this is done unbeknownst to the client when they go into these places. It is a popular thing. I don't want to say popular, but it's a common thing that happens at particular or specific salon types that I won't necessarily name here, just because I wouldn't say all of these types of salons actually practice these really unfortunate treatments types that they've coined as a treatment. So I won't name, because I've gotten myself into some conversations that really didn't want to enter into when naming them specifically as a particular demographic or salon type. If you've had this experience, you probably know. If you're a hairstylist that have had clients that have had this experience, you know exactly where I'm coming from. So what happens is that they go in to get their hair done. They're getting a shampoo style. They may be going in to get a doobie. That's a dead giveaway. However, what happens at the shampoo bowl or even prior to the chair, in the like short conversation or consultation prior to going to the shampoo bowl, is they ask you if you want a deep conditioner. So what we know as a deep conditioner, it is a very highly nutritious, possibly concentrated formula that comes in various forms. Usually it's in creams, jar, and we know them as masks. However, there are other treatments that will offer deep conditioning to your hair too, that comes in other textures, so on and so forth. So we're thinking that we're getting a deep conditioner, which is something that our hair needs, especially if you have textured curly hair. I don't think you should ever skip a deep conditioner, no matter if you have a lot of time to let it sit or pop under the dryer or utilize a steamer. However, you encourage that penetration most with heat or without. You don't ever want to skip a deep conditioner, because textured hair is typically, drier anyway because of the curls. That's a whole other conversation. But when they say, do you want a deep conditioner? Of course I want a deep conditioner. I always want a deep conditioner. I'll never turn down a deep conditioner. And when you get the deep conditioner, you get your, hairstyle blown out, roller wraps, however they're styling it. You leave, your hair is bouncing and behaving. It's shiny. It looks amazing. You try to rock this style for 2 weeks because you're stretching it out because you don't want to shampoo your hair again because you don't want to revert back to the curls necessarily. And you want to get your money's worth. When you do decide to shampoo your hair, you realize, you shampoo, you condition it, and you realize there's no bounce back to your curls. Your hair is stringy. It's straight on the ends or mid shaft to ends, or it just looks limp and not like your natural texture or your hair. It appears that there's something going on. You're thinking possibly maybe it's just because I just had my hair blown out and straightened and the curls didn't bounce back. Or maybe I got a hold to a little, heat damage to my hair, but in actuality, your hair has been relaxed within the conditioner. So that's what it is.
And I feel like there are so many problems around this. And one is if you have to hide what's in the treatment, then I think anybody that has done this, you knew what you were doing and you know what you're doing to people. But because for whatever reason, I can't even imagine a reason that a stylist would feel like it's necessary. Like, why would you feel like it's necessary to permanently straighten someone's hair when all they've asked for is for it to be washed and blow dried? Like, I feel like it's a really painful, it's such a painful experience for customers to go through. And then once they've been through it, it's also, there's no way to prove that that's what's happened afterwards because they don't know what was put in their hair. It's not like you're asking them to show you every bottle as they're using it, but it's just that element of that people are hiding what is in that treatment. And then clients are like painfully finding out afterwards when they're, like you said, when their curls don't bounce back. And it's that element of trust that's then broken and damaged. And then how do you come back from that as a customer? How do you then go and feel comfortable in somebody else's chair after that's happened to you? And as a stylist, what I also don't understand is, as a stylist, how did they then continue to get business after that's happened? Because if it's happened to one person, it's probably happened to 50, 60 before.
So you brought up a lot of points there. And I don't know where to start, but I think the first one was, why does this happen, or why does the stylist feel that they need to do this or should do this? And you guys know I'm always saying controversial things sometimes. But it's because these stylists are lazy. They don't want to take the time. They don't have patience for textured hair. And it's just simply the only explanation. Because why would you do that? Especially after people, it takes a lot, especially for someone going from a relaxer or some chemical straightener, to get to the point where they're embracing their natural texture and their natural curl as it grows from the scalp. And they are now feeling empowered and excited about their natural texture. They have embraced it, and it's taken a lot to get there usually. And so once you get there and to have something like this happen, it's truly devastating. However, it's because the stylist there's no other explanation for it. The stylist just doesn't want to take the time and doesn't have the patience to actually do what needs to be done with textured hair, especially if you have highly textured hair or your curl pattern is considered on the tighter spectrum of curls. When you go into certain types of salons, they're not charging a lot of money. So they're trying to hurry and get people in and out. And, you know, if you come in there with super dense hair and, you know, beautiful 4-category curly hair, I've gone in there and I'm a 3-category curl. And I've been offered, and this was years ago when I was testing the waters. I don't let many people touch my hair, especially certain types of people in certain salons, because I feel like they don't have the expertise that I need to work with my hair, or they don't have the actual experience. I don't know what products they're using, so on and so forth. But I had started hearing of this happening. I've had, you know, I had clients of mine saying that this has happened to them, and I'm like, you guys got to be kidding me, because who would be doing this? So I went in there with my head of hair. It's not the tightest of the tight, but it's not the loosest of the loose. And this is like in the early 2000s when I had a lot more hair than I have now. And the girls was like, oh, your hair is dry. You need a deep conditioner. She doesn't know that I'm a hairstylist, you guys. My hair, this is even before I was doing any type of color to my hair. I only color now to cover gray, so I had no color in my hair. I had no highlights in my hair. My hair was extremely healthy, probably too healthy. That's the thing. But she told me that my hair was dry. And so I'm clocking her because I'm like, my hair is dry. I'm like, I don't think my hair is dry. Oh, yeah, your hair is dry. You need a deep conditioner. Okay, well, what type of deep conditioner are you using? So she shows me a jar that is in another language that I'm not fluent in. I don't even know what the brand name is. I don't know what it's saying. I ask her and she's like, oh, it's just a deep conditioner. It's just going to make your hair much nicer and much softer. Much nicer.
Oh, dear.
So I was like, no, I am not getting that deep conditioner. However, there are other people coming in and out of the salon that have gotten the deep conditioner, or they're being offered the deep conditioner. And I can see that, you know, they're just scooping their hand at the shampoo bowl now, scooping their hand in this bucket of stuff. And they're applying it to the client's hair. They are letting it sit on the client's hair as if it is a deep conditioner. And so if you don't know, you can be pretty much bamboozled. So I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is really a thing. But again, I'm not saying anything because I'm coming in there as an unofficial secret shopper. I'm secret shopping for myself to see what's going on. And so, yeah, and that's the thing. They want to keep it moving. When you go there, it's like an assembly line, and this person is doing this, and they're just moving really quickly, and they're hurrying up and rolling your hair, and they're putting you under this god awful hooded dryer that's on a setting from hell, and you know, burning your scalp, and then wrapping your ears up with these things. Like it was the worst experience ever, and I've only gone there once, and only for that purpose. So my hair, maybe because they didn't use the deep conditioner, was not the smoothest. It wasn't the bounciest. It wasn't the sleekest. It didn't have all the body that most people do. And if I had said yes to the deep conditioner because of the texture of my hair would have been straight. And I've never in life have had a relaxer in my hair. And when I tell you, I would have been devastated, like beyond devastated. And I would have been bringing State Board up in there. It would have like, because I know. So it would have been a totally different outcome for them that it is with most, or like the average client or customer. And so that's my thing. People don't want to take the time to learn textured hair. They don't have the patience for the textured hair. They're just worrying about getting people in and out. This is when someone is not really passionate about what they're doing and the type of hair that they're working with. They just want to get you in and out. And so that's the only explanation that I have as to their why, which I would never know because I would never do this. And I just think that it's one of the worst things that could ever happen to you in the salon.
Yeah.
And actually, so there should be laws against this, or it's a good lawsuit because I didn't ask for a relaxer in my hair. But once again, to another point that you made is how do you prove it?
Yeah.
Well, you can prove it if you have gone in there. There's a way to prove if your hair has been chemically relaxed or not.
Okay.
It's going to look different than if you just have heat damage.
Yeah.
And that's when you bring in the scientists and bring in the science behind beauty. You can tell when someone's hair is chemically straightened or relaxed versus heat style.
Okay.
So
Well,
it
for
is a way to do that. And I encourage, like, anytime I have someone have this conversation, it breaks my heart because I am just who I am. And I've never been against relaxers, but I've only been for them when it's absolutely necessary based on someone's lifestyle or based on the hairstyle that they want. And if you want that sleek little pixie, then you might have to get a relaxer because it's not going to lay like you want it to lay because of your curls and so on and so forth. However, I'm team natural hair since I don't know when. My mom never let me get a relaxer. So, okay. If you're not going to beat me, you're going to join me and y'all are not going to get these relaxers. But anyway, that's another conversation. So, yeah, I think that's what it is. I think also it's happened. It doesn't only happen in these particular salons that it's most common in it. I have heard that it's happened in other types of salons with other types of stylists. And if it's not relaxer, sometimes they throw in some little keratin treatment, something which there's a solution, and it gets to be a point where I'm just thinking these people don't want to take the time that it takes. Because when you get your hair blown out or silk pressed from your natural texture, you're not expecting this to last forever. That's never a request. We do want it to last, maybe push it out 2 weeks for those that only shampoo their hair a couple times a month. But you don't want it to last forever. You want to be able to resort back and to revert back to your natural curls. So you want those curls to bounce back. So
yeah.
I could go on and on, but let's keep it moving.
Well, I mean, two things that you said that were really interesting. One is that there is a way to tell when your hair has been relaxed versus when it's like been heat straightened or whether it's suffering from heat damage. So I think it would be really good to know what those things are so that people that have experienced this or think that they've experienced it are able to go away and check. And then another thing is, you mentioned it in your story, but what are some red flags for people to look out for in case they feel like it might be happening to them? Like, for example, for you, it was the tub of product that was in a language that you didn't understand, that was in a brand that you hadn't seen. So there was no real way for you to verify that that was a deep conditioner. So maybe let's start with those two things to help the people that have either been through it or even help prevent people from going through it. What are the ways that people can see and test that whether their hair is straightened through heat or chemically straightened?
That's you need to go to a professional stylist for that, and not the one that you left. And your curls never reverted back. That is something that you need to go to a professional stylist to identify. There are some things that just average people aren't going to be able to identify, because I can sleek your hair out and smooth your hair out, and it appears to look like it's been relaxed because it's so sleek, it's so smooth. There are no flyaways. However, it's just a silk press. So without having that eye and that knowledge, that technical knowledge and that science behind it, you're not going to be able to know. There are also ways to identify the type of relaxer that someone's using your hair, calcium versus sodium. So that's something that you need to take to an actual professional stylist that is extremely experienced
Mm-hmm.
And you could do your research on who might be the best in this area. If you leave your stylist that this has happened and that's been your go-to stylist for a while, you have to start doing some research to get into a chair to figure this out. However, the next question, what was your next question
The
regarding
next question is red
the
flags. So once
identifying?
you're, yeah, so if we know we have to go to a stylist to identify, okay, I think this might have happened to me, I need to go find a stylist that can tell me whether that has or hasn't happened. The next thing is once you're in the chair, how do you identify the red flags that might suggest someone's trying, or the stylist that you're working with is trying to do that to your hair? They're trying to offer you a relaxer but disguise it as something else.
When they're asking you questions, when you're asking them questions and they act as if they don't really know how to answer or want to answer, or they're giving you really short answers. Because if I'm using a product, it doesn't matter what brand it is. If I'm using a product and I am like, I believe in this product and the efficacy of this product and the performance of this product and how it's going to make your hair feel after, how it's going to fortify your hair, which is why I'm calling it a deep conditioner, how it's going to, give you long lasting moisture retention and all the things. I'm going to be able to relay that to you as a customer. It's not going to be like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just, deep conditioner because your hair is dry. I'm going to explain to you. This is part of what we do here is educate people in certain things. Now, there are some ways that I would speak to a hairstylist that I won't speak in that same way to a consumer or my client, because they're just not going to get it, which goes back to the science behind it all. Going to an actual hairstylist to identify or help you identify if your hair has been relaxed or it's just been heat damaged, because you're not going to get it as a regular consumer or client. However, you will get that, okay, this ingredients, this formula has ingredients in it like, aloe that's going to help bring moisture to the hair or draw moisture to the hair. It's going to have, so we understand that as regular consumers because now we have so much education that's on, internet, on social media, and we've been privy to this information that maybe some years back only professional stylists would know, or how ingredients work within certain formulas. If the person is being very short, they don't want to answer questions, they don't want to, she showed me it, but she was kind of hesitant. She, sort of grabbed it and I wanted to like touch it and then I did, and she was like, oh, well, and she probably knew that I couldn't read it. But I think that's a key indicator that they're trying to hide something. You're being sneaky. Because why not tell me about this product? Especially if the other thing is, if you're going to a salon or to a stylist and they're using products that you're unaware of, you've never heard of before, or okay, this is sold in Timbuktu only, but we're in the US, why are we using this from Timbuktu? And if we are using this from Timbuktu because it's so great, then I need you to explain to me why it's great and why it's going to be great on my hair. And when you're not getting that, that's a red flag as well. Also, again, I feel like, and this is another conversation, but stylists, I come from an era of stylists that we give a lot in the consultation. We have the conversation. Like, we like talking to our clients about what we're going to do, not just setting them in the chair and say, okay, this is what you want, this is how much it's going to cost, spin you around the next 4 hours later, and here you have the style. Like, we educate as we're going through the process, and we're educating, okay, now I'm going to use this hair serum because this is what it's going to do for you, and if you want to maintain it at home, I recommend that you do this. If your stylist is not doing that, they're just trying to get you in and out, bang, 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 we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and send you out the door, red flag. That's even if not even speaking to sneaking things into the conditioner, but that's just in general. You need to know what your stylist is doing because you need to know how to maintain your hair at home, and you need to know how to better care for your hair when your stylist is not available. I mean, stylists take vacations, stylists go on maternity leave, stylists do all the things that normal people do. So you're not always going to have me. And I like to empower my clients so that they feel comfortable doing their own hair if they ever should need to. So
Yeah.
I'm educating them. So I think those things are like the key indicators, but also just doing your research prior to going to the salon. There are a lot of blow dry bars out here now that only specifically work with, you know, styles that just require blowing out the hair. I believe in those salons because sometimes you just do want a good blowout and you don't want to do all the things, and you can walk in, you don't have to have an appointment, it could be spontaneous. You know, if you have a hot date that just came up on Match.com, you can go there, walk in and get your hair done so you can look good later. However, again, without calling out these types of salons, I'm not sure what the correlation is, because you can have these types of salons, but everybody doesn't know everybody, but they all tend to do the same thing. And it's been, I've lived in New York for many, many, many years where these salons are super popular. And in the testing center, when we would be testing, I'm like, what happened to your hair? Oh, I went over to this salon and you know, when I left, my curls never came back. Girl, you have relaxing your hair. Cause Honda, no, I didn't. I only went for, but I'm telling you, this is what happened. So it happens a lot there. And this could be, you know, little old ladies, and this could be young girls. It doesn't matter the age. If you have curly hair, you could be a victim of this. So beware. It's happened to a friend of mine. She used to rock a little teeny weeny fro. It was super cute on her. It was super hydrated, shiny, all the things. She wanted to get a blowout because she was growing it out. She went to get it done. She loved it. She went to shampoo her hair. She didn't only have stringiness on the ends, because keep in mind her hair is shorter. It was straight and stringy from root to tip.
Oh.
And she called me up. I was like, where did you go? And she told me, I was like, oh, they put relaxer in your hair. She's like, no, they didn't. They said deep conditioner. Ma'am, friend, I'm telling you, it was a relaxer. It's happened to someone that I know. She's actually a beauty founder, and she had gotten her hair finally back to, you know, her natural texture. She was loving it. She was embraced it. She was super proud and excited. She got a blowout. She had some appearance, went to the appearance. The hair was bouncing and behaving. A couple weeks later, or however long, she went to shampoo her hair and realized that her hair would not bounce back. She had to relax on her hair. She actually took to her Instagram stories to talk about it, and she was like literally holding back tears.
Oh,
like this happens a lot, you guys. And it's not just, you know, she used to be a beauty executive, and now she's a beauty founder, and she couldn't even identify until after the fact that her hair was relaxed. So it's just, you have to do your research. We say that consistently here, which is why we have Main Hookup, and we have a list of qualified, talented, licensed hairstylists that can be trusted. But you can't just pop into salons because of the convenience of it all. It's just, it's not always, I mean, you could do it and you could have an amazing experience and this doesn't happen to you, but then you're always taking a chance. It's really a risk nowadays for that, especially with all of the natural hair going on. So
yeah, I think it's what's really sad is when people have put all of that effort into growing their hair out. You know, imagine you spent, I mean, I've spent like the past 6 years growing my natural hair out. I stopped relaxing my hair about 6 or so years ago. And I can't imagine how devastated I would be if I walked into a salon having spent 6 years growing out my hair to then know that that's been undone. And then knowing that, oh, you then have to start from scratch if you want your natural hair. And if you don't want or believe in relaxers, then that's what you're going to do. And you're starting from ground zero. And not
Yeah.
because you asked to, but because somebody took away your right to like say what you wanted by deceiving you basically and saying, oh, this is one thing when it's actually another. And I feel that it's great that obviously we have to do the research and people need to do their best to look for a stylist that's like qualified, knows what they're doing, is going to be trustworthy. But I feel that even with all of those things, there will still be people that will go and do this. There will be the few that will just go and do it anyway. And so I'm thinking, how, if that has happened to somebody, I'm sure there are going to be people that are listening where that this has happened to. What do you do afterwards? Like, what how do you hold the stylists that do this accountable? Because you can't turn around and you can't get your hair back immediately. You're gonna have to start from scratch. But how do you go about like actually reporting something like this and making them being held accountable for what has actually happened? Because essentially they've given you a treatment that you didn't ask for. It's completely changed the texture of your hair, and you now have to go through the painstaking labor of getting your hair back to where it was before, which is time, energy, and money. And emotions, because you're going to feel distressed about it until you feel like your hair is in a state that comes close to where it was before. It's just something that's going to like distress people. So how do we create a world where if stylists go down that path and actually do that to clients, that they're held accountable for what they've done?
I say, well, I think you and I had this conversation before, so it may be different there. But in the US, as we currently stand, you have to be licensed. You have to be a licensed cosmetologist. I do know that some states, and I'm not sure how many or which ones, or even if this is a thing anymore, but they used to be able to do natural hair without a license. But for the most part, we have to be licensed here, licensed professionals. And when we are licensed professionals, we get licensed through the state board of whatever state we're in. So you need to take it to state board. I know California does not take complaints on licensed stylists. They don't take it lightly. Like you can go on that website and you can actually pull up a stylist's name to see if they've ever had any complaints or ever had any sort of fines or anything like that. So California is a state that does not play when it comes to state board. Other states, you just have to contact them and explain your experience and situation. Obviously, you're going to have to reveal the salon and also the stylist within the salon, and they will do their due diligence to see, okay, is this person actually licensed? Is the salon licensed? Because you can have licensed stylists, but the salon actually has to be licensed as well in order to be in operation. It has to be a licensed business. So that's your first, I think, call to action is going straight to state board, and they will do the investigating. They will pop up at the salon. They don't announce themselves. They just show up, which is why when you are in salon and choosing salons, you need to take a look around, because state board can pop up not only for situations like this when they've had complaints on a stylist or the business in general. They can pop up on you because just to pop up. And if they come in and you don't have your soiled or dirty tools in a certain box and you have them mixed in or in the same drawer, if your drawers aren't lined with towels and things, that like there are a lot of rules that us licensed stylists have to follow to be up to code. And which is why it is important to make sure that you're going to stylists that actually are licensed and follow these rules
Mm.
because it's for your safety. You can pass, there are certain skin conditions and diseases and parasites and things that can be passed from person to person to person, especially when they're not following the guidelines and the rules and the sanitation.
Yeah.
And all of that. If they're not using barbicide on their combs and they're going from one head to the next, to the next, to the next. Like, State Board is your friend as the client. It's our friend too, to keep us in line. But I feel like when you don't follow guidelines, State Board, you wouldn't consider them your friends. But for the clients, it's definitely for the client's purpose to make sure that they are in safe environments and that their stylists are practicing code of ethics and just sanitation and things like that when it comes to cosmetology. So
Yeah.
start with State Board. They will guide you and advise you. And once an investigation starts, it may take a while, but it's not going to stop there. And then once you're red flagged with the State Board, they're going to start popping up. They can pop up at any given time. They don't have to make an announcement.
Oh.
This is why you should always be on quality. But once they get that red flag on a certain stylist or a certain salon, they are going to keep a watch on it. And I feel like nowadays it's not taken as seriously because there are so many non-licensed people that are styling hair and working in salons and doing, certain, treatments and things. And it's become, I don't want to say the norm, but it's become really common that a stylist may not be licensed. Like, there are some stylists that have become really popular and Instagram famous that aren't even licensed stylists. So it's just one of those things. But for the sake of the client and making sure that you're in good hands, you should definitely do your research on your stylist, on the salon itself, but also lean into State Board if you go somewhere and something has happened and it's not right and you need that support, because you're not going to be able to go straight to the lawyer and say, this is what happened. Like, you have to start. I think the first place to start would be State Board.
Yeah.
And that's why they're there. So.
Okay. I think that's really good advice, because I don't think many people know that that's actually, regardless of what's happened, because I'm sure this is like one of many like bad situations that can happen with a stylist. Stylists can like really damage people's hair, when they're not familiar with the hair type, but they're still doing their hair anyway. So it's actually good information for people to know if there have been other incidents where they can actually report a stylist to the State Board as well. But what do you do if they're not licensed? Because if they're licensed, then this feels like it's quite straightforward. It's like, cool, you're licensed. You've relaxed my hair without my knowledge. I've now spoken to a hairstylist that's helped me to prove that my hair was actually relaxed. I've got a chain of communication where you can clearly see that I've asked you to do this on my hair, and that communication doesn't show anything about a relaxer. Great, I can go straight to the State Board. I've got enough evidence. I've got enough information. That's almost like the best of a bad situation when you've got that to back you up, right?
Yeah.
What do people do if they happen to have seen somebody who is an unlicensed stylist in this situation? Is there anything they can do at that point?
I still would say go to State Board because you have to be licensed. And so if you're reporting on a stylist that's not licensed, then State Board would know what to do from there. So I don't know what the steps are. I've never worked in the salon. Like, I've worked at home and in my basement and on the porch and other places without a license, but I've never stepped foot in the salon, not being a licensed stylist. So I think in that case, if the stylist isn't licensed, but maybe perhaps the owner to the salon is, or the manager or whomever, because some salon owners aren't even stylists. And again, like I said, if the business isn't licensed, but if the business is licensed, they're going to go into, because you can work under someone as an apprentice in a salon without a
Mhm.
license, but that person has to be licensed. And
Yeah.
if you're their apprentice and this has happened and you're working under them, then that's a red flag for them, and state board probably then,
Oh.
I don't know, discipline them in some way or fashion. I don't know. That's a great question. And I probably I attend some of the state board meetings just as a licensed cosmetologist a lot of times, because they talk about a lot of different things. Particularly, maybe this is a subject that I could bring up, but I might ask, because I never thought, like, what happens if the stylist is not licensed? And what if the owner isn't licensed? But what if they're working just amongst other people that are licensed, but they're not apprenticed under these people? They're just placed in the salon to work as a non-licensed stylist. I don't know where you would go. I would say, of course, go to state board, but I don't know if there's another call to action. I don't know. You wouldn't go to the police. Like, you go to the hair police, maybe. You don't go to the cops. I think it's probably something similar to, when you think of the medical field, they have boards, medical boards, and if you need to take something to the top, then you go there. So that's what state board is for cosmetology and hair and barbers and nails and all of that. That's what state board is to beauty, is the board. So you take it to them and they could direct you in which way you need to go. They could actually probably guide you. They will probably step into the situation with you to represent you. So go to state board if you are in a situation, any of these types of situations. If you go to a salon and you see something really gross happening, like, go to the state board. And it's not being, mean, or it's not being, you have to report these things because it's for your protection. So
Yeah.
I am one, like, I still do this to this day. If I'm cutting someone's hair and I drop my comb on the floor, I'm not going to pick the comb up and put it back in your hair to cut. I see stylists do that all the time. They kind of dust it off and they keep going, or maybe they don't even dust it off. But I am that one. People laugh at me because in my personal life, I'm sort of like a germaphobe, but I'm not. I am not doing anything that's going to hinder my health or put my health at risk, as well as my client. Like, you want to make sure that, your stylist is doing these practices. You don't want, if you never see your stylist with a barbicide jar or placing her, you need to see it. It has to be out in the open. That's part of the rules of state board too. And again, each state has different rules, but for the most part, it has to be visible that you are sanitizing and disinfecting your tools and utensils. So that's just me. I'm the germaphobe stylist. I don't, I've encountered lice on many occasions when I used to be a stylist at Supercuts. And don't sleep on Supercuts, y'all. I learned a lot of my amazing hair cutting skills at Supercuts. But they used to bring little kids in, and little kids, a lot of times, I've seen ringworm on little kids. This is why you have to sanitize things properly, because if you're not really looking, sometimes those things can be hidden. But now your comb is contaminated and you use it on the next person because you didn't see that ringworm, and now the next person, you pass it off. So that's what I'm saying. But little kids used to come in, and lice, it tends to harbor itself like behind the ear because it's warmer in that spot. So they and I'm not only a germaphobe, but I'm arachnophobia and all the bug phobes. the first time it happened, like, we learn about these things in cosmetology school, but they don't actually bring a person in with lice for you to encounter it in person, like, to experience it. So you typically experience it on the job.
Yeah.
And that little girl, I'm so crazy, y'all. But I screamed at the top of everyone in the salon. I felt little girl because she didn't know, but it had gotten to the point because lice, they lay eggs.
Mm.
It had gotten to the point where she had no eggs. She had living bugs.
Oh no.
She had bugs crawling. And when I tell you, sometimes even now, like when I talk about it, I can never unsee it. It's like the scariest, creepiest, and I literally screamed at the top of my lungs. I dropped my comb. I stepped back from the chair, and the manager comes running over. What's going on? And she looked at me. She said, "Lice," and and the poor little girl. Her parents. I don't know if her parents didn't know, but it had gotten out of control. There were tons of these things, and they weren't eggs. Like eggs, it's still creepy, but it's a little bit different because they haven't hatched yet. But once they hatch and you have all these, oh my gosh, bad. So that's what I'm saying. if you're not, and so my manager, we knew what to do, but at this point now we have to we have to sanitize pretty much the whole salon because the little girl's been flipping around on the chairs out front, and now she's up here. I have my cape on her, she's in my chair. So we pretty much had to get everyone out of there and sort of like do like a thorough disinfecting and sanitizing of the salon. But we had we kept lice, I forget what it's called, but it's something for lice that actually you shampoo the hair with and it kills them. And I couldn't do that part because when you put that on them, they scramble. And my manager was trying to force me. I was like, you do not want me doing this. I'm telling you, they're going to think it's a murder going on. So she helped me. I loved her. She was so helpful. But she helped me in that. The little girl, we had to calm her down because I'm screaming, jumping. She's terrified. I feel so bad because I love the kids. But that little girl had bugs, tons of them. The parents, so we had to ask them the questions like, how long have you've been noticing? Oh, we didn't know. And so we're like, how do you not know? You don't shampoo your daughter's hair. You don't comb your daughter's, like it was really bad. And I'm just thinking for the little girl, she had to be itchy. Her scalp had to itch like crazy. So anyway, I say all that to say you have to know who you're going to, the type of salon, and you want to make sure that, you're calling when something is not right. Because you don't know if they're practicing, if they are practicing these, how do I want to say, if they're not using good practice on you or the person that came before you, it's happening to everyone. So you're just passing on things from person to person, person to person. And that's not cool. So
yeah, I mean, sanitation is one thing. That's one of the many things that you want like a qualified stylist to know, so that, again, those things don't get passed along. But anyone that is like trained and qualified will know. But even the people that are trained or qualified, it's also about them just caring enough to do it. Because people being qualified doesn't mean that they care more. That just means that they're qualified. It's a combination of the two. It's like they need to, in an ideal world, qualified plus you've had enough of a conversation with them to feel like they actually care about the outcome and they care about looking after you and they're invested in you learning how to look after your hair. But I think it's, again, good advice for people to know, regardless of if they're licensed or unlicensed, go to the state board. I mean, the last thing that comes to mind for me is, as stylists, how do you manage a relationship with somebody who's had this experience before they come to you? Because that's going to leave them in some state of trauma, and you're almost having to rebuild a bridge that you didn't even set fire to. And so how do you continue to be really sensitive towards the fact that that person has had a really, really horrible, terrible experience that nobody should ever go through, but then also also create a space where you are still like the professional and you're able to say like, you know, I am knowledgeable and experienced in this area. There's an element of you also have to trust me, because that's a very difficult position to be in when they've experienced something that awful. And I'm sure there are stylists who've been through it, who have had clients come to them after an awful experience. And they might be, in theory, the greatest client in the world, but at that moment in time, it's like you're just having to rebuild trust that you didn't even break. So from like your experience, Katanda, how do you think stylists can go about doing that when they have a client that's had one of these bad experiences?
That's such a great question, but also it's a real thing.
Mm.
And it's sort of like, especially with us and our hair as a community as a whole, we've already gone through so much trauma surrounding our hair and the texture of our hair because of the way that it grows out of our scalp. So this is another layer of trauma that seems like could have been avoided, but it happened without the clients knowing. So how could they have avoided this? It could have been a client that did their due diligence in their research, and that someone could have referred this client or these clients to a stylist that actually has done this. And so you feel like you checked off all the boxes. And now, even with that, you feel like you've been bamboozled, or you've been intentionally, because I this is actually intentional. And it's I don't know what to call it, but it's actually a form of
It's intentional deceit.
Deceit, but I want to almost call it, I don't know what type, but it's a form of abuse. Because you're intentionally doing something adverse or something that is not warranted. You're disguising it. You're deceiving. That's abuse. And we're just going to call it hair abuse for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
It's abuse. And we as stylists, we already are the unofficial therapist. And so now we have to go above and beyond. We have to handle these clients that have experienced things like this with care, with tender, loving care. We cannot shun it off. We cannot joke about it and laugh it off with them, because deep down inside, even if they're laughing with you, they're still hurting on the inside. Especially someone, like you said, you've taken so many years to go natural with your hair, and now you're finally to the point where you're 100% natural. It took so much out of you, even just emotionally, to embrace that. And now you're there, and then here we go, you feel like you've regressed in not only your hair and the condition of your hair or the state of your hair, but even emotionally. Because now I have to build myself back up to get to that point. Or maybe was my hair that bad that this person needed to give me a relaxer? Like I needed the relaxer, which is why this person did it. So you're thinking all the things. And me as a stylist, like I said, working as a stylist behind the chair, but also in a testing center for a beauty brand. I am always like I'm going to encourage you regardless of what happens. So even if we're in a testing environment and this has been your experience behind the chair, I am here to administer a certain type of test. And usually that is very technical, and you can't reveal a lot of information because it's all confidential.
Yeah.
And you have to do things by the book. I'm going to take it upon myself to, if I'm facilitating the test, I'm going to spend more time with you as a client and maybe say, you know what, based on your experiences before, maybe this particular test is not for you, but I will want to bring you in as a client to get you back to where you want to be in your goals, your hair goals. But also, if you are my client behind the chair and say, for instance, you're a first time client, I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through it the whole way. I am going to explain everything thoroughly. I am going to explain from the time you sit in my chair to the time you walk out the door, exactly what I'm doing to your hair and why. I'm going to encourage you so that you feel empowered and like this is not the end of the world. And I don't want you to feel like you're not good enough or your hair is not good enough or you were less than. It's not your fault that this happened to you. So that's when we really have to put on our therapy hats and just put yourself in the shoes of your client. Like if this happened to you, you would feel the same way. It doesn't matter if you're a stylist or not. So it's sort of, one of those things where we have to get back to the customer service side of our business, which I think trumps any skill set that you have, because you can have mid or mediocre skills, but your customer service and customer relations and the way that you handle your clients and the way that you care about your clients and care for your clients, the way you treat them will trump the baddest hairstyle that you could have ever gotten. Because some clients will tell you, oh, I went to that stylist and she was super amazing at styling hair, but she was always on time, or she was never on time, and she was always overbooked, or he was always overbooked, or the conversation that used to go on in the salon, it was too much for me. So they would choose to go to someone that may not be the better stylist, but they're the best as far as business, and that coming to them as the customer service, because you want to be pampered when you sit in the chair. You want to be pampered. You want to relax. I mean, I feel like most people do. This is like a service and a high price service that you want to feel like you got your money's worth leaving out. You don't want to have to go through all of that. Someone that's being rude and short and nasty and, oh, I'm going to charge you for every little thing that you didn't do that I had on my website. Like, are you going to really, you might gain money that day with this client, but are you going to retain this client? So it's about retaining the client, and it's about rebuilding that trust with the client. And your client is already the trust is probably going to be out the door. So you're going to have to work on building that trust. So you're going to have to do what you have to do to get that trust back. And then the client, if you're able to rebuild the trust in a client and sort of like step into a situation where they've been traumatized, you will have a client for life.
That's true.
Will never leave you.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we have to do, not only when clients have been traumatized and in bad situations with other hairstylists, but just in general. This is how you have to treat your clients. Without the client, you have no business. Your bills are not going to be paid. Like, we need the clients as hairstylists because this is our livelihood. And I just feel like we have to go above and beyond, especially in a situation like this, but just in general as licensed hairstylists, going above and beyond for your client. And it's not only about how the hair looks, but it's about how you make them feel.
Yeah. And I mean, when people have, like you said, when people have experienced that kind of trauma, the only thing you can do is be patient. You have to be really patient and be prepared to take the time to probably over-explain everything to begin with. Until they feel comfortable. They might want to look at every product that you put in their hair until they're satisfied. But that's the reality is in the instance that they didn't check or they didn't think to check, they ended up having a relaxer that they didn't ask for.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that they're then hypersensitive to anybody putting anything in their hair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think it's that patience and being prepared to, as you say, go above and beyond in the way that you would for any client, but also acknowledging that they're going to ask you a million questions, because again, the time that they didn't ask, it led to a really bad outcome for them, and they'll expect you to be able to explain things to them in a way that makes sense. So even if you're like the most knowledgeable person, if you start explaining things to them in a language that they don't understand, that's like too scientific or too detailed, again, that might raise red flags for them, because they'll be like, I don't understand what you're talking about now. That might feel like you're trying to cover something up, when the reality is you're just trying to go into as much detail as possible. It's also understanding how to say the science in a way that makes sense to the everyday person that isn't as knowledgeable as you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a skill that's not really easy for everybody. Some people are so in the detail that they say things almost expecting everybody else to know what those words mean, when a lot of people won't. So I think that's also something to be mindful of. But I mean, it would be good to know if anybody who is listening has had an experience of this before. Have you ever had somebody relax your hair without your knowledge until after the fact? As a stylist, have you ever seen this happen before? Have you ever worked in a salon and been like, oh, this is what they're doing here, and then like quickly tried to exit? Again, I think part of these conversations isn't just us talking through what happens and thinking about, oh, how can we change the industry so that this happens less often? How can we protect each other? How can we protect ourselves? But it's also hearing people's stories, because the more those stories are told, the more awareness that people have of it. And again, the more awareness that people have, the more that they can put themselves in a position of strength by asking those questions, by saying, you know what, if I don't know what it is, I don't want it in my hair. It's all of the above. So I mean, for anybody who's listening, if you've experienced this before and you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear what your experience has been in the comments as well.
I feel like when you're going to your stylist and asking questions, you don't do not take shortness as, oh, they don't have the time, because they should spend the time. And this is part of the reason why I encourage consultations. So you can come to me and ask all the questions. And depending on the type of consultation, I don't charge for consultations, because it's sort of like, we need to have the conversation, and the consultation is not only for the client, but it's also for me, because I might feel like, okay, you're not the client for me based on, okay, this is not the services that I provide. You know, I wouldn't be the best for you, or for whatever reason. This is for you and the client, or the client for the client and the hairstylist to determine if we are a good pair.
Yeah.
So having the consultation. So I don't think, like, people know I will talk to you forever about hair, your hair, my hair, the girl up the street's hair. Like, I'm just involved in the conversation so heavily that sometimes I have to stop myself, because I just love to educate you as the client, and also learn more about your hair as a hairstylist, because the more that I know about your hair, the more I know about your experience, the more I know about the history of you and your hair, the better I'm going to be for you. The more I'm going to know how to approach you when you're coming to the salon, and what to do and what not to do. And I actually have a client, it's a celebrity client, and she had some trauma years and years and years ago when she was very young with her hair, and that trauma stayed with her. And she started wearing her hair really short, like a short little pixie crop cut. And she started growing her hair out, and she had to do a photo shoot. And so they called me. They're like, yeah, you know, we need to book you for makeup, but she also wants you to do her hair. And I was like, she wants me to do her hair, because we had this conversation time and time again where she won't let anyone touch her hair. The only person that she let touch her hair after that incident was her cousin that is a barber, which is, she used to have the short haircut. And so they're like, yeah, she grew her hair out and she knows you're great with curls and she wants you to style her hair for the photo shoot, but she wants to talk to you first about her hair. And I was like, sure. Now, this is a client that I've had for many, many years. I wasn't like, oh, but she don't need to talk to me. Like, I've been doing her makeup. She knows I could do hair. I had the conversation and we had to, it was over and over again. And although she trusted me with her makeup, she didn't outright trust me with her hair. I had to build that trust with her. It took me having the conversations. It took us bouncing, products back and forth. She's sending me a product. I'm explaining it to her and I saying, okay, this is what I use. Like, this is what you have to do with your clients, especially clients that have been traumatized, because again, it's not that just because you didn't do the damage, you still you're like damage control, or you have to repair the damage that they've experienced. So you have to come and you have to sort of try to take away that trauma from them in order for them to feel comfortable with you or anyone else. And so I just say conversations with your stylist, conversations, even if it comes highly recommended, conversation with you've been the massage therapist for this client, but now they want to sit in your chair, your hair chair. You still need to have the same consultation that you would do a stranger. So that's what I would say. And the photo shoot went well. She was still a little rocky with the hair. She asked me every single thing I'm putting in her hair. Although we talked about it prior to on set. And I'm not saying, oh, I don't have time because we have to hurry up and wrap this photo shoot. I'm explaining it time and time and time again. So have patience with your clients. Answer all the questions. Bring it down to 5th grade level if they don't understand. Some people are super savvy with their hair and some people aren't. So bring it down to the basics and 5th grade level. And I feel like that would make a better experience for the client, but also make a better working relationship with you and the client, and an environment for the client to be in. So it's all about trust and patience.
No, that's very true. And I think that's all really good points for people that, like, say, stylists that have to go through that experience of rebuilding that trust with people. It's good to have those examples and know, okay, it's a process. Like you said, it's about patience and being prepared to rebuild that trust with somebody. And a lot of that stems from, like you said, those initial consultations. But I mean, this is not a small topic by any stretch. So again, we've come to our hour, so we have to wrap up now. But I really do want us to kind of like continue the conversation in the comments. Again, get other people's stories, other people's experiences, whether you're a stylist, whether you're, a customer. Well, hairstylists are always both, like the stylist and the customer. So on both sides, we'd love to hear more. If this is something that you've experienced and you found the topic interesting, please share with other people. The more we share, the more we're able to help others. And again, there's lots of things that Katandra said today that is helpful for the people who have had the experience that may need to, say, take something to a state board or to go to a stylist and help understand what's actually happened to their hair. So, I mean, like I said, it's been great talking about it. Katandra, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think I said a lot. Of course, I could keep going on and on, but I will say trust yourself and your instincts. And if you are in a salon chair or at the shampoo bowl chair and something doesn't seem right, feel right, take up your stuff and leave. I don't care if your hair is wet. Do not proceed. Do not proceed with caution, because sometimes when we proceed with caution, it's too late and now you have to start all over again. So if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't seem right, if it doesn't look right, you have the right to leave.
Yeah.
That's that. So
100%. I mean, on that, again, a huge thank you to everybody that's listened from beginning to end. As usual, we're super grateful for our community and the people that listen to the podcast every week, and then B, the people that share it. And on that note, Like I said, leave your comments, leave your thoughts below. Also, let us know what other topics you're interested in hearing us talk about. And we will see you on the next episode.